are ready to present the Freedom Award, United Ukrainian Organizations of Ohio. There's only a small amount of information in the program, so I'll give you a little more, and then our speaker and the vice president of the organization, Jaskiw, will give you even more. Our award is going to say, in recognition of leadership established in 1928 in bringing together over 40 groups that represent the ethnic, spiritual, economic, political, and cultural interests of the Ukrainians in Ohio. For the leadership of your officers and organizations in bringing national attention to the unlawful aggression of Russia against Ukraine. For your continued efforts in lobbying for humanitarian and military aid to Ukraine in every possible source, especially our government and people of the United States of America. For your never-ending commitment in supporting and protecting the Ukrainian culture and traditions here in Ohio. Traditions here in Ohio will help in new arrivals from Ukraine to assimilate and prosper in their new country. For your organization's outstanding cultural values and support of the American Nationalities Movement, we'll be presenting this Freedom Award this July 21, 2022. And with that, I'd like to introduce the Vice President of the United Ukrainian Organizations of Ohio, Jaskiw.
President Judge Perk, honorable judges, Mayor Tony, Father, councilmen, and of course you, our dear guests and members of the Nationalities Movement. On behalf of the United Ukrainian Organizations of Ohio, I thank you for bestowing this honor on our organization. I extend regrets from our president, Martin Kelleher, who is unable to join us this evening. But I want to recognize our past president, Mr. Trush Magala Sr. Can you raise your hand, Mr. Magala? So I'm here in training. If I make any mistakes, you can blame him for them. So, in 1928, that is about 3 generations ago, the United Ukrainian Organizations of Ohio were founded under the principle, strength in unity. We encompass numerous cultural, religious, fraternal, veterans, economic organizations of the Ukrainian American community. Over the following years, the world witnessed the emergence of Nazi Germany, Imperial Japan, and the Soviet Union, which waged a war against their own people, against their neighbors, and murdered millions in atrocities such as the Cold War genocide in Ukraine and the Holocaust in Europe. Belatedly, and at staggering cost, the Allies defeated Nazism and Imperial Japan and settled into a very uneasy Cold War with the USSR. While the citizens in the West enjoyed prosperity and freedom, millions of people in Eastern Europe were suffering oppression. This was distressing to all of us in the West, but particularly to the ethnic communities of the United States whose heritage was traced back to Eastern Europe. And so in 1959, that is 2 generations ago, Senator Frank Lausch and Congressman Michael Thayen, both from our state of Ohio, submitted Congressional Resolution 111, establishing the Captive Nations Week and condemning communist totalitarianism. Cleveland Councilman Ralph J. Perk, the father of our president, organized ethnic community leaders, and the combined advocacy resulted in the bill passing Congress and being signed by President Eisenhower. And this led to the founding of the American Nationalities Movement in support of the struggle of captive nations. In 1991, that is 1 generation ago, the Soviet Union collapsed. The nations of Eastern Europe were reborn, and we all hoped the term captive nation would enter the history books. Unfortunately, aggression or repression continued around the world. In Cuba, the Balkans, Myanmar, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Somalia, Ethiopia, Rwanda, we ourselves were attacked on 9/11. And the Russian Federation embarked on a very troubling pattern of behavior. Brutal wars in Chechnya in the 1990s, invasion of Georgia in 2008, the occupation of Ukrainian territory in 2014, and the continuation of a low-grade war, and then followed by the propping up of a murderous regime in Syria. The world missed the warning signs. And then, of course, on February 24th of this year, the Russian Federation launched an unprovoked, unnecessary, and brutal war against Ukraine. The worst crimes committed on the European subcontinent since World War II unfolded on our screens. Nightmare events we heard about from our parents or grandparents of rape, mass murder, torture, deportation are being committed daily. We must call things by the real name. We are witnessing a massive and rapidly expanding war crime perpetrated by a regime with utter disregard for international law and human dignity. Mr. Putin compares himself to Peter the Great, engaging in imperial neo-colonialist expansion. The Russian army is randomly bombing indiscriminately schools, hospitals, residential buildings. 70% of their targets are civilian. We are all now bearing witness to state-sponsored mass murder and terrorism. President Putin and his propagandists have unveiled their final principle. Anyone who considers themselves Ukrainian, in distinction to being Russian, must be either exiled, re-educated, or killed. Ukrainian identity, language, nationhood must be erased. This constitutes the most unequivocal demonstration of genocidal intent since World War II. We, of course, are heartened by the resolve of Ukraine, by the bravery of its leadership, and the response of most of the free world. We are grateful to our representatives in this country, and particularly proud of Ohio Senators Portman and Brown and Congresswoman Capito, who constitute the vanguard of the congressional effort against Russia's aggression. We also applaud the strong support of Governor DeWine and officials across multiple layers of government across Ohio. Mayor Tony, the City Council of Parma, and others. And of course, we thank all of you as taxpayers who have been providing support materially. And why do we provide this support? Well, first, as Americans, we recognize that the threat to liberty of one is a threat to all. Second, the world is full of actual or aspiring despots. When I look around the room or read the list of nations in our organization, I see a number who are under threat of either internal or external repression. If Mr. Putin succeeds in Ukraine, others will be emboldened. And most importantly, Mr. Putin has declared that Ukraine is a way station, not an endpoint for his campaign. Russian propagandists crow about a Eurasian polity stretching from London to Vladivostok under Russian domination. Article 5 of NATO's charter binds us to come to the aid of any country in NATO that's attacked. Mr. Putin is not interested in peace or ceasefires. He's interested in a lull in the fighting so he can rearm and reorganize. The choices are clear. If we do not provide the people of Ukraine with the means to decisively defeat the Russian Federation, we will be sending our own sons and daughters in short order to battle a better equipped and more experienced adversary. And most of the people and leaders in this country understand the stakes. We particularly commend communities who've reached out to us organizationally. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are the Baltic countries. A few weeks ago, I joined them in commemorating the brutal deportations of 1941. Can you please stand up? Thank you. hundreds of thousands of the best and brightest were exiled, and many didn't return. In May, we joined the Polish community at their Polish Independence Day, Constitution Day. For several centuries, Poland didn't exist as a sovereign country, but lived in the hearts and minds of its people. On a per capita basis, no countries in Europe have given more than the Baltics and Poland, and we thank them for it. Our friends in the Jewish community of Cleveland have attended our events and spoken to all. Many of them trace their heritage to Ukraine. Given the tragic history of repression, discrimination, the Holocaust, they know all too well what hatred can lead to. We thank them for reaching out to us. There's a Ukrainian saying, only in dire straits will you recognize your true friends. We thank you for being true friends. Today is the 140th day of the war. 10 million Ukrainians have been displaced outside their country. 8 million inside their country. 1 in 4 Ukrainians has lost their home. Tens of thousands have been killed or injured. The damage to material structure is over $1 trillion. Despite his own losses, Mr. Putin's doubling down. What are we asking of you as we thank you for what you've done? Recognize that this war may go on for weeks, months, or years. Please stay the course. Ukraine's armed forces are beating back a frontal assault on the international rules-based order which anchors their own security and stability. Recall Santayana's admonition. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Advocate with the White House and Congress for continuing support for Ukraine. The most immediate need is for more and better weapons with which the Ukrainian armed forces can expel the invaders from occupied territory. The Russian Federation must lose this war decisively. We must make it abundantly clear to all, being a war criminal cannot be a rewarding occupation. State-sponsored terrorism cannot be a viable national policy. Mass murder will evoke painful consequences. We remain the arsenal of democracy. We have the capacity, and along with our allies, must have the will to remind everyone of the rules of the road. Educate your friends and neighbors. Remind them the plunder and destruction of Ukraine's agricultural capacity and the blockade of its ports is a deliberate attempt to induce a global food crisis. Our colleagues in the Middle East, from Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, and other countries know how much foodstuffs come from Ukraine. The wheat, the grain, everything else. Mr. Putin's goal is global suffering, instability, and mass migration. Be informed when you head to the polls this fall. Lobby the countries of your heritage to support the good fight. If you can, give generously to our organizations. Our own fund to aid Ukraine is partnering with MedWish to deliver medical supplies, and with the state of Ohio to send body armor. We continue to purchase and deliver to the front lines non-lethal aid as drones and night vision equipment. We support refugee resettlement, and to give, visit our website. Today's events remind us that history can be circular. We're back to where we were 2 generations ago, and we ought to review the Articles of Incorporation of the American Nationalities Movement, which presciently declared, I quote, "Despite all the efforts to liberate humanity, there's still tyrants and dictators holding people in captivity. Thus, there's still work to be done, and the American Nationalities Movement reconfirms its dedication to freedom for all people." Thank you. God bless America, and Slava Ukraini.
Somebody could go right between there.
Oh yeah?
What can I see
Can
back?
you say Slava Ukraini?
Slava
On 3. Раз, два, три. Слава Україні!
Beautiful. Hang in there.